What I find is when I talk to the older guys, they've developed these things over years. But the younger ones, what I find a lot of times is, unfortunately, they haven't really thought these things through yet. And so these are the first time, as I'm sort of guiding them through these thoughts, hey, how would you handle, you don't have a cell phone for 18 months, right? You can't reach home, but other than, right? So sometimes this is the first time I've really thought that through. And I think sometimes it's a difficult thing to think about. It's one thing to be excited about your job and be out there and doing what they do. But when the reality of what that would look like. And so I wouldn't say I've seen necessarily an exact trend, but except other than most of them have not really taken the time to think that through.
It's interesting you talk about the phones, because you got to the point in 2004 and a phone wasn't that big of a deal to not have, and it was kind of how did you meet your friends? You all went to the same square and caught up with each other. But nowadays, so much of this generation of everyone, not even a generational thing, on their phones all the time and so connected and engrossed with the electronic world. But if a situation like that comes up, they won't be able to anymore. So would you say that that is something that you're seeing in the US military, that conversation needs to be had more and developed?
I know locally, our commanders were very aware of that. And that's one of the things they pushed out before any of our big field exercises, where the guys aren't going to have their phone, that, hey, this is a legitimate mental health concern. The older guys, we grew up without it, and yeah, we're also used to it. But we can go a few weeks, right? It's not the end of the world.
It's more of a fuel. I have a cigarette.
Yeah, it's like a long Shabbat, right? You have your phone, okay, it's kind of a breather. But if you're 18, 19, you grew up in this world, you've always had your phone. You can't imagine not being able to contact people. It's not, they don't understand a world where they can't contact someone right away. When you pull that away for weeks or months on end, that's a legitimate stress that I think leadership does have to take into consideration, that we might not fully understand it, but for that is a legitimate stress that, hey, they can't, they're used to being able to chat with their wife and, whenever they want, and that's taken away. And then that compounds with all the other stresses of, again, even in exercise, but all those other stresses of being in the field, food and hygiene and all these other things, you add that to the mix and it can be very difficult. Soldiers might have something going on back home, difficulty, that they're used to speaking about when they get home at night, and now you cut that off, right? And they go to work for 3 weeks, 4 weeks out in the field with no contact, and they start to ruminate, and I think it's a serious issue, and one that's probably not going to be going away as we get just more and more used to this digital life.
So what are some of the things that you've seen personnel to experience and then talk about when they've had that experience of being off their phone for 2 months, 3 months in a field exercise?
Yeah, we had one of our major field exercises recently, and this was one of the major topics of discussion out there was the difficulty that they were having not knowing what was going on, right? Some of them may have had, family members with health issues or just, financially, where they were part of that discussion, and now they have no clue what's going on, completely cut off. And it's the first, sometimes, us, at least we have Shabbat, we turn it off, we get somewhat used to it. Some of them literally have never not had their phone on them their entire adult life. And this is that first experience. So I did see it's very stressful for them. It's very difficult for them, and they don't, not just the lack of communication, but also just the boredom. A lot of young people today don't know how to be bored, right? And when you're sitting out in the field for weeks on end, there's a lot of intense stuff, but there's also a lot of boredom, and some of them just don't know how to be bored anymore, right? Without having to be able to check something. And but on the flip side, on the benefit, you also see a lot of bonding in those situations that you might not see in garrison. Guys talking to each other, laughing, playing cards, right? Getting to know each other on a deeper level. And that's, at least for me, that's when I had my most meaningful counselings, was when we're out there and, hey, they've got nothing else to do but start to think about deeper questions, spirituality, these kinds of things.
So in some ways, it's almost a healthy thing that they're getting to experience.
I think
something
so.
that a lot of other kids,
they might disagree, but I think
yeah.
it's good because they contemplate, and some of these soldiers I know very well, just from in garrison on post. But when we're out in the field, the depth of the conversations and the depth of their thoughts, they become much more receptive to spiritual talks and spirituality. because they're looking for something.
So what are some of the conversations that infantry kids are talking about today?
It's, again, when we're in the field, which again, when I think was deep, was a lot of it was, hey, what does God think of what I'm doing? Hey, I'm looking for something. A lot of them grew up without any type of religious experience or connection, and they're looking for some purpose and understanding. And so that's what we see on the deeper level. Day-to-day counseling, it's the routine, right? You see a lot of work stress, a lot of relationship issues. Those are the sort of the main focus of the counselings I do. Are difficulty at work, adjusting to Army life and those kinds of things, and family issues, related to the Army or not. But in general, they're just 90% of the time it's just the same issues you'd see on the outside, right? It's a young 22-year-old married to a young 21-year-old, right? And there's going to be issues with that. The Army can compound that, right? The stresses sometimes, but those are the majority of the counselings I have are regular life stuff, right? Soldiers are regular people, and they have the same issues.
But that being said, you think about the age of marriage these days. It's definitely not 21, 22, but that does happen a lot in the military.
Oh, yeah.
So it's an interesting rabbit hole to go down. Why do you think that happens? That
is very interesting. I hadn't really, that you do see more young marriages in the military. There's like the jokes in the military that you get, the benefits that come with, you get married, you're out of the barracks and you get a little extra money, that kind of stuff. But a lot of the soldiers I had, they were married, before the Army, young. So, maybe it's just a demographic that the Army attracts, kind of a more conservative, old-fashioned kind of mindset. Maybe that's why. But you do see more. It'd be an interesting statistic, but I think we do see more young marriages in the Army than in the civilian world.